Hello, this is Phil Tomzak, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the March 27th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. And let's start with some front page news. Our first story with the headline Toronto area crypto shops are caught in sustained crackdown by money laundering watchdog. And this comes from Sheila Wong of the investigative reporter for the Star. 11 crypto shops on Yonge Street had their registrations revoked as Canada's anti-money laundering watchdog continues its crackdown on a sector facing mounting concerns that it is vulnerable to illicit activity. The businesses were identified in January by the Star in collaboration with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the ICIJ, as part of an investigation that revealed a proliferation of scores of shops advertising crypto services on the thoroughfare, the majority of which were not authorized to do so. Of these 11, FinTrack has just unauthorized. Of these 11, FinTrack has just unauthorized. 6 were not registered to provide virtual currency services in Canada. The regulator did not provide reasons for the enforcement actions, including why it revoked registrations for the 5 other Yonge Street crypto shops that did have permission to deal in crypto. Virtual currency firms can be used to move illicit funds while bypassing law enforcement and regulators, critics have warned. The Star and ICIJ had also revealed that GTA crypto shops used wallets allegedly linked to Iran-backed terror groups. The new batch of registration revocations has brought FinTrack's total to 320 over the past 5 years, an enforcement effort previously criticized for not going far enough. More than a quarter of the revocations have happened in just the last 3 weeks. FinTrack's announcement also included the revocations of 40 other businesses' registrations, mostly in Ontario and British Columbia, that also provided crypto services. FinTrack put out the list of its newest revocations on Wednesday. Ottawa keeps the pedal down. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne has recently underscored a significantly increased pace of action, vowing to maintain the momentum and pursue new measures to address risks posed by virtual currency businesses, which can be used to facilitate money laundering and fraud. Dennis Munier, a former deputy director at FinTrack, said Wednesday's announcement was a positive step. Now there is momentum, he said. I am encouraged to see that FinTrack is focusing on those that are involved in virtual currency because they are high risk. Publicity can create pressure, and that appeared to be a factor, cryptocurrency investigator Richard Sanders said. He noted that the regulator's revocations of the 11 shops came 2 months after the media asked about them, which suggests FinTrack has the ability to act quickly. Concern over FinTrack's methods. Not on the revoked list are the 2 Yonge Street shops that the Star had found used wallets allegedly linked to Iran-backed terror groups. FinTrack has not answered questions about these or any individual shops. FinTrack is committed to ensuring that businesses fulfill their legal obligations, said agency spokesperson Darren Gibb. When it is warranted, the center will take action to prevent businesses and their services from being used to harm Canada and Canadians. FinTrack can also issue administrative monetary penalties and generate non-compliance disclosures for police in support of criminal investigations, he said. With the velocity of the enforcement, however, comes concerns about whether some revocations are warranted. The agency said it can revoke registrations if an owner or operator is convicted of certain crimes, such as money laundering or terrorist financing, doesn't answer the agency's requests for information, or fails to update FinTrack on changes to its name or address. Once a company's registration with FinTrack is revoked, it can no longer legally operate. Let's move on to our next story. And the headline is, Judge calls out prosecutor over allegation she berated a Toronto cop about not lying under oath. This is why you don't go and yell at an officer, she said. And this comes from Jacques Gallant, Courts and Justice reporter. The allegation a veteran Crown attorney berated a Toronto police officer and suggested he should have lied under oath risks marring the integrity of the justice system, regardless of whether the prosecutor used the exact phrase, "we protect our own," a judge said Thursday at the close of a tense week in court. As the Star has reported, Crown attorney Marnie Goldenberg is accused of yelling and swearing at Toronto Police Constable Eden Hassenbasic in January in the hallway of the provincial courthouse at 10 Armory Street. The encounter was caught on video, but without sound. Hassenbasic has just finished testifying in the case of Khalid Patrick Idris, who is accused of deliberately hitting another officer with a motorcycle. Hassenbasic said it doesn't appear to be a head-on collision, and the officer wasn't seriously injured. Soon after, Hassenbasic wrote in his notes that after being confronted by Goldenberg in the hallway, he asked her, "What was I supposed to do, lie?" And that Goldenberg, who is married to a police officer, responded, "We protect our own." Goldenberg has adamantly denied saying those words or suggesting Hassenbasic should have lied. She says she confronted the officer because of inconsistencies between his testimony about the motorcycle incident and his notes and statement. This week, Ontario Court Justice Mara Green is being asked by defense lawyer Peter Thorning to stay the proceedings against Idris due to abuse of process, both because of the hallway encounter, in which Thorning argues Goldenberg suggested Hassenbasic should be giving false evidence, and the fact that Goldenberg didn't call Hassenbasic to testify when his evidence could have helped clear Idris. Hassenbasic was instead called by the defense. During closing submissions on Thursday, Green frequently interrupted Crown attorney Simon Heaney, the head prosecutor for downtown Toronto, as she questioned whether Goldenberg's alleged actions had tainted the public's perception of the justice system. While Heaney urged Green to reject the claim that Goldenberg said, "We protect our own," pointing out no other witnesses testified hearing those exact words, Green wondered if the mere fact that the Crown was berating a witness in a courthouse hallway communicated that message regardless. If I make a finding that she in fact did berate this officer for his testimony, isn't that consistent with effectively telling him, "You didn't toe the party line," Green said. Heaney responded that she could have been communicating a variety of things, arguing that it's unlikely Goldenberg was trying to convey that specific message in a 90-second interaction. Arguably, what this case calls into play is that when an officer who gives evidence contrary to the Crown's position is berated by that Crown, that whether the words "we protect our own" were uttered or not, that is implied. That is what is included in that berating, that this is a "we stick together" kind of moment, Green said. She went on to describe that the integrity of the justice system is only maintained if people continue to have confidence in it, pointing out that there is frequent criticism about a supposed lack of oversight of judges, Crown attorneys, and police officers. She highlighted that she's been presented with evidence not only of Goldenberg's actions, but also the fact that the officer in charge of Idris's case, Detective Constable Eloy Silva, sent a reminder email to officers, including Hassenbasic, about coming to court in January for Idris's trial, writing, "Please remember that this was one of our own that got hurt in this collision." Silva testified Thursday he wrote that to provide context about what the case was about, saying it might not have been evident to the officers based on the name of the accused alone. In a system that the public can only respect if we're transparent, isn't that the kind of scenario where the public is outraged? Green asked. Isn't this the very kind of case that might mar the integrity of the justice system? Green will deliver her decision on the stay application at a later date. And our next story from the front page, from the GTA, the headline is, 11 years for a man who kidnapped an innocent Toronto boy over his brother's cocaine theft, sparking a citywide manhunt. When I closed my eyes to sleep, I relived every detail of my abduction in the worst way, which was the worst ending, the boy told court. And this story comes from Jacques Gallant, Courts and Justice reporter. Samir Abdelgadir has been sent to prison for just over 11 years for his role in the high-profile 2020 kidnapping of a teenage boy in retaliation for his half-brother stealing 90 kilograms of cocaine from his drug dealer employers. With credit for time served in jail in pre-sentence custody and for strict bail conditions, Abdelgadir still has 9.5 years left to serve. The 14-year-old boy, whose identity is covered by a publication ban, was kidnapped in March 2020 outside his North York apartment building while on his way to school. He was found 36 hours later in a Brampton barn, disheveled but alive. The kidnapping sparked a region-wide search and led to multiple arrests and a promise from the Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders that the force would be aggressively investigating this. The kidnapping of an innocent boy for criminal financial gain steps from his home while on his way to school is a very serious offense, Superior Court Justice Sandra Nishikawa said on Thursday. The harm caused to the boy is immeasurable. His life changed forever the day that Mr. Abdelgadir and others decided to kidnap him as leverage for his brother's actions. Abdelgadir, 44, has been largely out on bail since his arrest in 2020, including since his conviction last March. Crown attorneys Aaron Panzer and Sean O'Neill had been asking for 16 years in prison, while defense lawyer Glenn Orr argued for 5 years, the mandatory minimum for kidnapping a child. The case against the 5 men ultimately arrested in the plot largely crumbled, and only Abdelgadir ended up being convicted of kidnapping. Liban Hussein was shot dead in 2024, though there's no indication it was connected to the kidnapping. His charges had already been dropped following a preliminary hearing. Hamed Shahnawaz and Soleiman Nassimi pleaded guilty to burning the Jeep Wrangler used in the kidnapping, but said they thought it was for an insurance fraud scheme. Shahnawaz also pleaded guilty to stealing it, and the Crown stayed the charges against Scott McManus. Nishikawa had concluded following a judge-alone trial last year that Abdelgadir drove one of the 3 vehicles involved in the abduction and was standing by as a backup while the boy was snatched and dragged screaming into the Jeep Wrangler. Abdelgadir has continued to deny his involvement in the crime, which Nishikawa noted in her decision Thursday. His refusal or inability to accept responsibility for the offense committed or for the harm he caused to the boy means that he lacks insight about why he engaged in such harmful, unlawful activity and the consequences of his actions on others, she said. Thursday's sentencing decision finally brings the long-running case to a close. The trial was adjourned several times over the years as Abdelgadir cycled through defense lawyers. He finally landed on Manbir Sodi, who handled the trial last year, but who was removed from the record a few months after Abdelgadir was convicted. The sentencing proceedings were also adjourned several times until Nishikawa put her foot down. The trial saw the boy's half-brother, Olalekan Osekoya, testify remotely from an undisclosed location due to ongoing fears for his safety, and Shahnawaz testified against his former co-accused, accompanied by court officers who brought him in and out of the courtroom through a separate entrance, with the Crown at one point contemplating asking the judge for an order excluding members of the public during his testimony. The boy was abducted outside his family's apartment building on Driftwood Avenue in the Jane Street and Finch Avenue area while walking towards his father's car to take him to school on the morning of March 4, 2020. When his son didn't arrive at his car, The father assumed he'd taken the bus. The family only learned of the boy's kidnapping at the end of the day because the school never notified them of his absence. Meanwhile, the abductors were texting Osekoya, demanding the return of the stolen cocaine and sending him 2 videos of the boy lying on the ground with his wrists and ankles bound. One of the videos included the message, "Do you want the fingers or to Mom's house?" In a victim impact statement read by Panzer at Abdelgadir's sentencing hearing in January, the boy said he was unable to sleep alone for weeks after being rescued. "When I closed my eyes to sleep, I relived every detail of my abduction in the worst way, with the worst ending," he wrote. "I'm brought to tears every time I think about it. I still can't believe that someone wanted me dead or hurt at all. At that age, I didn't even think I could die." You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Let's move on now to our next story from News from the GTA. The headline is, "George Brown College files a mass termination notice in the face of steep drop in enrollment." The Toronto College has indicated it is laying off 22 hourly and 29 salaried employees amid budget pressures. And this comes from Janet Hurley, senior writer for The Star. George Brown Polytechnic has triggered a mass termination process under provincial labor rules, signaling deep cuts as the college grapples with intensifying financial strain and a sharp drop in enrollment. The Toronto College has indicated it is laying off 51 employees, 22 hourly and 29 salaried, according to a government-required notice mandated for mass terminations when employers plan to let go of 50 or more staff within a 4-week period. The Form 1, dated March 4th and seen by The Star, attributes the circumstances to adapting to shifting government policies and the significant enrollment and budget pressures. This follows 27 faculty layoffs in January and February from the hospitality and business schools, according to the faculty union. The union also said 7 faculty in construction and engineering were laid off in early March, and 13 in liberal arts and communications received notice this week. Faculty union representatives said they had not previously seen a Form 1 posted at the school before and noted that management has indicated further layoffs are expected. The union representing support workers at the college did not respond to The Star. A spokesperson for George Brown said the difficult decision to reduce some employee positions was a last resort taken only after exploring all other cost-saving measures and following a comprehensive review of program delivery, workload, and operational requirements. The spokesperson added that the institution is committed to delivering high-quality programs that prepare students for meaningful careers across a range of industries and has had to make workforce and program adjustments to ensure long-term sustainability. The layoffs come as current full-time enrollment has fallen 29% to 15,889 compared with the winter 2025, with particularly steep declines at the Casa Loma and downtown St. James campuses. At St. James, where several hospitality and culinary arts programs were suspended last fall, the campus is operating at just over half its capacity from this time last year. And our next front-page story from the Department of Investigations. The headline is, "A judge seals the person of interest records from Barry and Honey Sherman murder investigation. Thousands of pages remain redacted." The Star continues to argue the documents should be unsealed so that Toronto police investigators' missteps can face public scrutiny. The story is by Kevin Donovan, Chief Investigative Reporter for The Star. A Toronto judge has kept sealed portions of thousands of pages of Barry and Honey Sherman murder case documents that reveal the identities of many individuals police speculate were involved in the killings, including information Barry provided to his own doctor before he died. I am satisfied that the ends of justice would be subverted by the disclosure of the redacted materials at this time, Justice David Porter said in his recent ruling on the Star's now 8-year-old request for access to the police files. Porter has also kept a lock on pages that the Star argued likely detail mistakes detectives have made in the investigation, including the initial belief by a pathologist and detectives that it was a murder-suicide, and a failure by detectives to seek alibis from most of the Shermans' family members, friends, and business associates. The Star has argued that these missteps need public scrutiny to prevent mistakes in the future. Justice Porter ruled that releasing more information would pose a serious risk to the police investigation and prejudice the interests of some of the people named in the documents as persons of interest. Porter made that ruling despite affidavits filed in court by two people connected to the Shermans who stated they know they were considered suspects and are fine with anything said about them or by them being released. The Star is appealing Porter's ruling. In its appeal, called a certiorari, pardon the mispronunciation, filed last week with the Superior Court of Justice, the Star has noted that Porter appears to have only considered the most recent sworn police search warrant application, the 13th, and not the previous 12 packages of documents, which contain information from the early days of the Toronto homicide probe. Barry Sherman, founder of generic drug giant Apotex, and his wife Honey were murdered in their home on the evening of Wednesday, December 13, 2017, roughly between the hours of 8 and 10 p.m. Their bodies were discovered 2 days later, posed in a macabre tableau on the deck of their basement swimming pool, belts looped around their necks and tied around a railing to keep them from falling into the water. Their wrists had been bound while they were alive, and they died of ligature strangulation, most likely thin cable ties in both instances, but no ties were found at the scene. Why the Star is asking for the documents to be unsealed. Over the past 2 years, Porter has heard arguments by the Star and Crown attorney Molly Flanagan over whether additional portions of about 4,000 pages of search warrant materials should be unsealed. Porter took over the case from retired Justice Leslie Pringle, who had earlier ordered about 60% of the documents to be unsealed after successful arguments by the Star. These documents are part of 13 judicial authorizations, called Informations to Obtain, or ITOs for short, made by Pringle, allowing homicide detectives to serve dozens of search warrants and production orders on banks, cell phone companies, and in one case an office that housed Sherman's business records. Each judicial authorization is 100 or more pages long and contains forensic reports, the result of police canvassing of the neighborhood, and names and statements made by persons of interest. Let's move on next to a couple of opinion pieces. And one is surrounding the Blue Jays. And the title of the opinion article is A Tragedy, an Email and a New Life. The story behind Joe Siddall's journey to the Blue Jays broadcast booth. And this is written by Rosie DiMano, the A-Star columnist. For a young Joe Siddall, growing up in Windsor, the soundtrack of baseball was Ernie Harwell on the radio. On his first day of spring training with the Detroit Tigers, he heard that distinctive voice in the clubhouse. As he came around the corner, my jaw probably dropped. Oh my goodness, that's Ernie Harwell. 28 years on, it's Siddall's voice that has become familiar on radio and television and synonymous with the Blue Jays. From major league catcher to radio broadcaster to TV analyst in the booth, successor to beloved Buck Martinez. I will never use the word replace. I think of Bob Uecker with the Brewers, Mr. Baseball. Well, Buck Martinez is Mr. Blue Jays after playing and managing and broadcasting and being part of this franchise for over half of its existence, he said. Siddall filled in at length for Martinez last season when the former Blue Jays player and manager and get-up ball color commentator took a leave of absence for treatment after being diagnosed with cancer. In February, Martinez announced his retirement, turning the last page on more than half a century in baseball. Big shoes to fill for Siddall, alongside play-by-play man Dan Shulman, now that he's been officially confirmed for the permanent TV analyst position. Their styles are diametrically different, Siddall more low-key and not so outwardly as animated as Martinez. Though he's had his moments, particularly during a no-holds-bar critique of manager John Schneider's confounding decision to summon meltdown reliever Brendan Little from the bullpen in Game 5 of the American League Championship Series last October. It didn't end well. I disagree with this move wholeheartedly, he had declared, and millions of fans nodded in agreement. His baseball IQ is as high as Martinez, though. 13 years in the baseball trenches, yet just 73 games in the big leagues, and he won't be trying to outbuck Buck. Everyone's got their own little nuances. I've always said, be you. It's who you do best. The sudden post-baseball trajectory, after playing for the Montreal Expos, or Washington Nationals, Florida Marlins, and his cherished Tigers, began with a sympathy email from Jerry Howarth, longtime play-by-play voice of the Blue Jays. It was February 2014. Siddall and his wife Tamara had just lost the youngest of their 4 children, Kevin, a week shy of his 15th birthday, to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was right after the boy's funeral. Siddall and Tamara were in the kitchen in the depth of grief and heartbreak. He barely knew Howarth beyond exchanging pleasantries on the field at Tiger Stadium when Siddall could come down from Windsor to help out during batting practice. Certainly he had no broadcasting experience. Siddall returned a message of thanks, adding a quip about maybe seeing Howarth in the booth someday. But he didn't really know what he was saying. Howarth immediately shot back, "How about right now?" "We were just in a fog," Siddall recalls. "I knew we weren't thinking straight. Jerry Howarth reached out to me offering condolences, and here I am 13 years later." Tamara Siddall, a physician, had her work as an outlet to keep going. She recognized her husband needing something too. Who ever thought it would be this, Siddall marvels. Howarth had never even heard Siddall speaking on radio. He immediately arranged for him to go to the Fan 590 for a chatting spot. "Right away, I heard a voice that was very comfortable to listen to," Howarth recalls. "He was very articulate. I emailed him, 'Joe, I'd like to have you as my partner.' As it happened, Howarth didn't have a partner at that moment." Within a fortnight, Siddall was at Jay's training camp for an audition. He's never left. After doing just 2 spring games with Howarth, Siddall was offered the radio job. It's a constant of the game that catchers make great managers and great analysts, probably because they're the only players facing the other way, clocking the whole field. "Everything's in front of you for sure," observed Siddall, "but I think it's just the volume. Even if someone's a minor league catcher for years and years, it's calling games, it's attacking hitters' weaknesses, knowing your pitcher's strengths." When coaching youth baseball, Siddall used to joke with his kids, "I'm the brains of the operation." Except it's no joke. The pitcher has got tons on his mind. He's thinking about his mechanics and how am I going to grip this curveball and how am I going to execute. That's the whole thing as a catcher, building trust with your pitchers. You call it, he throws it. Siddall has since transferred those instincts, insights, and a well of trust with fans to the TV booth, this season slated to do 125 to 130 games. Being in the booth, I find it's almost like you're still in the game. The juices are flowing like when you're a player, and the 9 innings of pitch to pitch. That's the part I really love about being fully immersed in a baseball game. Life throws curveballs at you. Nothing more painful than losing a child. Siddal thought back in those darkest of days that his son was sending him a message of endurance and survival to chase a new dream. Baseball saved my life. Kevin saved my life. Jerry saved my life. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Let's move on now to our next opinion piece from a Star columnist, and it has the headline, "It's been 25 years since Canada locked up this man. The government must finally admit that was wrong." And this comes from Justice Ling, staff columnist for the Star. It's been almost 25 years since Canada locked up Hassan Almray. It's been 17 since the federal government was forced to release him. And he's hoping 2026 will be the year Ottawa admits it was wrong the whole time. Almray was first arrested in October 2001, just after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Gripped by anti-Muslim paranoia, Parliament empowered our security state to act on behalf of Canadians' misplaced anxieties and run roughshod over due process. With Islamophobic hysteria on the rise again, Almray's explosive lawsuit, which seeks millions of dollars in damages, has come at a just time. "This wrong will be right," Almray said, who is from Syria, told me by phone earlier this month. "We will correct this mistake." Canada could spend a small fortune hiring lawyers to fight him in court. Instead, it should agree to settle the case. Almray is seeking compensation, and state publicly that the government will never again short-circuit the foundations of our legal system for the sake of expediency. At the heart of the case is a security certificate, the powerful and arcane legal tool that allows the ministers of immigration and public safety to deem non-citizen threats to Canada's national security and therefore inadmissible to the country. Those non-citizens can then be detained immediately and indefinitely, pending deportation. It's on a security certificate that Almray was held. Security certificates existed prior to September 11, 2001, but their scope expanded radically in the months after. They permitted Ottawa to argue cases ex parte, that is, without the accused or their counsel present, and on the basis of evidence not required to be shared with the defendant. Even federal court rulings on security certificates were heavily redacted and classified. Emails obtained through Almray's case file reveal that only 1 week after 9/11, officials at the Canadian Security Intelligence Service were relishing the opportunity to use security certificates to lock up and deport Middle Eastern migrants. They also show the agency's employees lamenting its difficulties winning legal cases under the normal rules. CSIS started on a list of target names, expatriates ostensibly linked to extremism, terrorism, and Osama bin Laden. Almray's name was on it. Almray came to Canada in 1999 on a forged passport and claimed refugee status soon after. His family had ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, an Islamist political organization, and Almray himself had fought with the Mujahideen during the Soviet-Afghan War. These facts put him at risk of detention or worse in his native Syria. They also put him at risk in Canada. "I fit a certain profile for them," Almray said. I was like a birthday cake for CSIS. The agency put Almray under surveillance and got a judge to sign off on his security certificate. He was slated for deportation to Syria, but the courts blocked the move owing to the high probability that he would face torture on returning home. He spent 5 years in provincial jails before the federal government built a special prison for men held on security certificates, the Kingston Immigration Holding Center. Almray and 2 other men who had experienced this Kafkaesque system, Adil Charkouai and Mohammed Harkat, together challenged the constitutionality of Ottawa's use of security certificates. In 2007, they won. As a legal tool, security certificates would remain in use, but the Supreme Court ruled that the government could no longer prosecute cases in total secrecy. Either the person must be given the necessary information put against him or her, the unanimous ruling states, or a substantial substitute for that information must be found. Ottawa chose the latter option, creating a new special advocate position to review and challenge the government's evidence. Under this new system, Almray was kept in the dark about supposed proof of his radicalism, while Ottawa continued pushing to deport him. It wasn't until late 2009 that Justice Richard Mosley finally quashed Almray's security certificate and ordered his release. He wrote, "There were no reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Almray had any association with bin Laden or was involved in a forgery ring. Indeed, there was no evidence to indicate he had ever been a threat at all." When Almray left prison, he still hadn't been shown the government's evidence against him. Ottawa eventually dropped its case against Charqui, although it's still trying to deport Harkat. He sued the government in 2010, but without access to the case file, his claim went nowhere. It wasn't until 2017 that one of Canada's leading national security lawyers, Phil Tunley, took up the case. Ottawa was still handling over documents when I spoke to Tunley this month. "Recent disclosures have just blown the lid," he told me. Let's move on to some sports. Coming from the Blue Jays. Article with the headline, "The Blue Jays Notebook. Why Davis Schneider Makes the Cut Over Leo Jimenez." Also, Dalton Varsho talks power and manager John Schneider on Rule 5 reliever Spencer Miles. This comes from Mike Wilner, baseball columnist for the Star. We're all Davis Schneider fans. Ernie Clement was effusive with praise for his teammate and ex-roommate as the Blue Jays held one last workout Thursday at the Rogers Center before the curtain lifts on the franchise's 50th season Friday night against the Athletics. Schneider got the final position player spot on the 26-man roster with infielder Leo Jimenez designated for assignment. It was a move the Jays wouldn't necessarily have made in previous seasons. When the front office valued asset retention so highly, Schneider could have been sent to AAA without having to go through waivers, unlike Jimenez. "Every situation is different," General Manager Ross Atkins said on Thursday. "This one was certainly different than any other that I've had. We're always going to factor in depth and the potential of keeping options and chances to win a game today, so tough decision. It felt like we were covered enough and that Davis had earned it." Schneider earned his spot not by batting .132 with no extra base hits in spring, but by being a key part of the big league team each of the past 3 seasons. And this time, that means more to the front office than making sure they wouldn't lose Jimenez. "Leo Jimenez is a phenomenal baseball player," said Clement. "He's a phenomenal human being. I've loved getting to know him over the last few years. I believe in Leo 100%. It's more a testament to Davis as a baseball player. We're at the point where we need the 26 best baseball players and clubhouse guys that we can get, and Davis is absolutely one of them. I think everybody on our team and all of our coaches, that's our guy. There's somebody we need in this clubhouse, and we need on the team to compete. He's going to do that. He does such a good job in whatever role is asked of him." Varsho and the long ball. Center fielder Dalton Varsho led the Jays in home run rate last season with 20 round trippers in 271 plate appearances, but he's never trying to hit the ball into the seats. "Homers don't really mean anything to me," Varsho said in a conversation for Friday's episode of Deep Left Field, the Star's baseball podcast. "For the most part, those are my misses. I don't try to hit the ball in the air. For me, overall, the more consistently I'm hitting the ball on the ground, I'm going to hit those homers just by accident." Varsho hit .380 and 50 at-bats in spring training and led the team with 5 home runs, 4 in the final week and a half. "Those are mistakes," said the fourth-year Jay. "I'm not trying to do it. It just naturally happens." The book on Miles. Right-hander Spencer Miles, selected in the Rule 5 draft, only has 22 and one-third professional innings under his belt, but Jays manager John Schneider likes what he's seen. I think what's really intriguing with him is his stuff, Schneider said about the 25-year-old plucked out of the San Francisco Giants system. I think there's a potential to work into a role that could be leveragey when other guys are down because of the stuff that he has. That would be a tall order for a pitcher who has only made 2 minor league appearances above rookie ball, but the Jays are excited to take a look. Let's stick with sports and go to the Breakaway blog. And the headline, Maple Leafs Player Power Rankings. John Tavares racked up real stats, and the fancy ones too. The former captain posted 3 goals and 3 assists in a 4-game point streak to climb to the top of the leaderboard for this segment. This comes from Kevin McGrann, sports reporter for the Star. The former captain, John Tavares, is our biggest riser and assumes top spot in our Maple Leafs power rankings. The Leafs went 2-1-1 in the latest segment. More stretches like that, and they wouldn't be in this mess. So be it. Here's a look at our rankings. Number 1, John Tavares. We've been hard on the veteran center whose minus has been piling up while his contributions have been, well, meh. But he's the biggest riser after a terrific week, leading the team with 3 goals and 3 assists on a 4-game point streak. He was also +2, helping to stanch the bleeding defensively. Even the fancy stats stood out. Tops on the Leafs with an impressive 63.33% in expected goals, and on the ice for 12 high-danger chances with just 6 against. Number 2, Jake McCabe. The gritty defenseman just keeps at it. A goal, 2 assists, and a team-high 8 blocked shots over 4 games. This team is out of it, and he's still putting his body on the line. Also led the Leafs in average ice time at 23 minutes 24 seconds. And number 3, Dakota Joshua. The power forward has been more like the player the Leafs thought they were getting last summer. His 12 hits tied Simon Benoit for the team lead. Throw in 2 goals and an assist, and, well, that's icing on the cake. Number 4, William Nylander. Mr. Consistent always finds a way to contribute offensively. He checked in this week with 2 goals and 2 assists, and tied Dad Michael as the highest scoring Nylander in NHL history. Both have 679 points. Michael in 820 games, William in 740. Matthew Knies, the good vibes are back with a 2-goal week, including an incredible singular effort to score shorthanded against Boston. Our number 5 performer, some may not like the decision to play through a nagging knee injury, but he insists he can't make it worse, and it's probably important for the 23-year-old forward to finish strong. His 59 points mark a career high. And now the risers. Forward Easton Cowan to 6th from 13th. His big week included a goal, an assist, and a +2. The rookie also started to mimic Nazem Kadri in terms of sticking up for teammates and bleeding blue and white. Goalie Joseph Woll to 7th from 10th. He went 1-1-1 with a .908 save percentage, but he faced a whopping 123 shots with 111 saves, most by any goalie on any team this segment. He's faced an average of an astounding 33.2 shots per game this season, the most by any regular goalie, and he's lived to tell the tale. And now about the new guys. Coach Craig Berube had nice things to say about recent Marlies call-ups, Bo Gruhl and Jacob Quillen. I love the young guys up here right now playing. They bring the juice every night, trying to prove themselves. They've handled themselves well. You always sense there might be a drop-off at some point, but I haven't seen that yet. Nonetheless, Gruhl dropped to 13th from number 1. A top 5 ranking was probably unsustainable. just one assist in this segment and bad possession numbers, 31.68%. Quillen remains mired at number 20, still searching for his first NHL point, and with 35% possession. Both laid out the hits, though. Gruel 8, Quillen 6. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Next, let's move on to an opinion piece from contributor Iris Gorfinkel. In the title, Unhappy Young Adults Are Showing Up in Canada's Happiness Index and My Family Doctor Waiting Room. Doug Ford Isn't Helping. Canada just posted its lowest happiness ranking since the World Happiness Report began. Out of 147 countries, we have fallen to 25th place overall, down from 5th in 2015. If the ranking were based on adults under 25, we would plunge to 71st place. Young adults have plenty of reasons to feel bleak. Housing, food, and student debt are far more expensive, while job prospects are shrinking with the rise of AI, and social media platforms are worsening mental health. Yet Premier Doug Ford's policy choices are making young Ontarians less happy. The happiness data are national, but provincial policies shape young adult lives. Happiness starts with a stable roof. The government's latest move to extend the 13% harmonized sales tax break on new homes and condos beyond first-time buyers is a welcome change, but it only partially offsets the 16% rise in housing costs since 2022. It gives a step up to the few young adults who can afford a home, but does little for the vast majority struggling to pay rent. Young Ontarians also face food insecurity. The cost of groceries in Canada has soared 22% over the past 4 years. Reliance on food banks has never been higher. Over 1 in 5 Ontarians under 30 currently depend on them. Reliance on food banks has never been higher. Over 1 in 5 Ontarians currently depend on them. Education is the backbone of Ontario's infrastructure, but that didn't stop the province from slashing support. Beginning this fall, the Ontario Student Assistance Program will shift from mostly grants to mostly loans. Nearly half of post-secondary students currently rely on grants. The plan is to replace them with loans, putting continuing education out of reach for many. This adds stress to those who will be able to afford it, draining hope and stealing sleep. The need for mental health support is growing among young adults, yet 70% of agencies report that services fail to meet those needs. Addictive platforms like TikTok and Instagram draw users into a world of toxic comparisons that keep people scrolling. Spending 5 or more hours daily on these feeds is consistently linked to lower happiness, yet policies continue to lag far behind those and their recognized harms. The happiness of young Ontarians was further eroded by Bill 124, which froze wages for hundreds of thousands of frontline healthcare workers, including early career nurses. Arbitrators later struck this law down, but the damage was done. Burnout soared as young Ontarians were left with wages that rapidly fell behind their costs of living. These policies eroded not only their happiness, but also their trust in government institutions. I see the impact every day in my patients in the form of anxiety, hopelessness, and sleepless nights. It's a 23-year-old who can't sleep for fear of the next rent increase, a 19-year-old who spends 6 hours a day on social media and can't get counseling, and a 20-year-old in tears because she can't afford nursing school. Hope is essential to happiness, yet Canadians under 35 hold a small fraction of the country's wealth, while baby boomers hold more than 50%. This isn't merit, it's timing. Boomers came of age when university was subsidized, jobs were plentiful, and homes were affordable on a single income. Each of these factors allowed their assets to compound over decades, especially through real estate. It's a stark contrast to the situation faced by young Canadians. Higher student debt, rising food and housing costs, a precarious job market, and AI that leaves them scrambling for fewer positions. The World Happiness Report is more than a snapshot in time. It's an action roadmap for governments. Ontario needs to wake up to the harsh realities faced by young Canadians. The determinants of happiness, healthy lifespan, social supports, and trust in government, rest with policy choices. The solutions are clear. Address rental housing, restore educational grants, fund timely mental health care, and respect frontline workers. The question now is whether Doug Ford will use this roadmap or keep steering young Ontarians toward an unhappy future. Let's move on to the world of movies. The article headline is Our Critics' 5 Must-See Movies for April, starring Super Mario Brothers and Zendaya. The month's films include The Drama, Mother Mary, and Mile End Kicks. This comes from Peter Howell, a special to the Star. There's a twisted couples theme happening in my 5 April movie picks: Cosmic Bros, a rattled bride and groom, swinging spouses, a rocking duo or trio, and a pair of fashionable antagonists. Also worthy of eyeballs, Anne-Marie Jacir's Middle East historical drama Palestine 36 on April 3rd, Lee Cronin's creepy family reunification The Mummy, April 17th, Antoine Fuqua's tragic superstar biopic Michael, April 17th, and the April 24th theatrical expansion of Sophie Ramvari's sublime family saga Blue Heron, which has limited engagements this weekend. April 1st, the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Wahoo times 2. The Super Mario film juggernaut takes a cosmic victory lap in this animated follow-up, which boots plucky plumbers Mario and Luigi out of the Mushroom Kingdom and into Princess Peach's shadowy past. Their latest adventure plays like interstellar pinball, where gravity is more an option than a rule. What's the buzz? The Super Mario Brothers movie earned nearly $1.4 billion, that's billion with a B, worldwide in 2023, erasing thoughts of past big screen misfires. These sibling wrench twisters clearly have an unclogged path to popular favor. Why I'm excited? 2 words, Jack and Benny, as in Jack Black as Bowser, and Benny Safdie as Bowser Jr. Sight unseen, I'm feeling Dr. Evil and Mini-Me electricity from this duo. This alone is enough to get me back into the theater for this animated circus. And on April 3rd, The Drama. An engaged couple's joyful wedding week goes sideways when a party game asking them to confess the worst thing they've ever done prompts a devastating admission from the bride-to-be. As the bombshell from Emma, Zendaya, blows up trust, her fiancé Charlie, Robert Pattinson, starts mentally replaying their entire courtship, wondering how well he knows the woman he's about to marry. What looks on the surface to be a quirky rom-com from Norway's Christopher Borgli takes an exceedingly dark turn, forcing family and friends, including Licorice Pizza star Alana Haim, to choose sides, as the couple weighs whether to embrace the mess or nix the nuptials. What's the buzz? The pairing of Zendaya and Pattinson had already made this a potentially good watch, but disturbing rumors about the plot make it a must-see. Why I'm excited? Whether this turns out to be an offbeat rom-com or an A24 provocation that leaves audiences reeling, it's one of April's most fascinating risks. And on April 10th, Follies. Directed, co-written, and co-starring Quebec talent Eric K. Boulian, this marital comedy turns a midlife crisis into a bittersweet pas de deux of passion and panic. After 16 years and 2 kids, Francois Boulian and Julie, Catherine Chabot, decide to trade fidelity for sexual frolics in the hope of spicing things up. What begins with curiosity soon tilts toward calamity as the couple's newfound freedoms expose the cracks between love and desire. What's the Buzz? It's one of the top contenders for the Canadian Screen Awards on May 31st, with 8 nominations, including Best Motion Picture, Director, Original Screenplay, and First Feature, plus 3 acting nods, leading role in a comedy for Boulien and Chabot, and supporting role in a comedy for Agathe Ledoux. And why I'm excited? Quebec filmmakers excel at marital mayhem, balancing laughter with tears, and judging from all the CSA love, Boulien's feature directing debut looks to be an exceptional example. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 27th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Phil Tomczak. Thank you for listening.